This is Dan Rogers, your host on We the People Town Square, coming to you from the center of the universe, the high plains of Texas, near the headwaters of the Prairie Dog Town Fork of the Red River. Today is December the 29th, 2023, and we are here with Joe Marr Wilson, who's running for the 108th District Court. Joe Marr, welcome.
Thanks, Dan, for having me.
Let's start off and tell the voters why you've chose to run for this position.
To be quite honest, Dan, I ran for the 47th District Court 2 years ago. The 108th was coming up looking at it with judges that are in and how long they were going to be there. It was really the court I was looking at, but when Judge Schapp retired that other court, I thought, well, I'll run for that. I've lived in Potter County a long time at this point, probably, 30 years at this point. And really liked the one county district court that had a lot of business just in one county, and so I'd looked at that. As far as why I would run for a court in the first place, I'm in the court all the time. I'm a trial lawyer. That's all I've done my entire career, and I really thought that it was the logical next step up. Kind of don't complain about something if you're not willing to fix it. Have my ideas about what we could do better, how we could make the court better, and thought I would do a good job at it.
So how could you make the court better?
The main thing that I think needs to happen in court, and this covers all, whether it's criminal, family, civil, is, the rulings a judge makes obviously are important, can be the most important thing in a case. But those rulings don't mean a whole lot if the litigants, the parties involved, and even the lawyers to some extent, don't feel like they got a fair shot. They don't feel like that the case was handled with appropriate seriousness, with appropriate expediency, that their concerns were heard. People at root really want to be heard. I think that goes across not just court proceedings, but politics, social behavior, everything. And so I've dealt for a long time helping people resolve their problems and resolve their disputes in very traumatic situations, normally involving family law or criminal law, but a lot of civil litigation also. And I think that I can give the type of demeanor and the type of environment for litigants that they will hopefully feel that they got the right decision. But even if they didn't get the right decision, that they feel like, hey, he listened to me, he made the best decision he could make. Because we all know, you can't be perfect. You don't know what the right decision is every time. You just have to look at the law and look at the facts and do the best you can. Aside from that, I think that the fact that this court, like most of our district courts, but specifically with these two Potter County district courts, handle a huge amount of criminal and family law. And that's the majority of what I've done, being board certified in both of those areas since 1995, and done that for 35 years. That I have the knowledge that a lot of judges don't have. I believe the ability to understand how people act in these situations, that we can make the best decisions and get the best resolutions we can on the family law side. On the criminal law side, try to move our dockets, get people the day in court they need, get the appropriate results for cases that fit the facts and the law, and figure out those people who need to be removed from the streets and remove them from the streets, and figure out the people that somehow made a bad mistake and need to maybe have a second chance. And I've dealt with a lot of people on both sides of that equation, and I believe that I can make those decisions in a very appropriate manner.
So let's explain to the voters a little bit how the court system in Potter County works, because a lot of people, most of the voters don't ever get to experience the courtroom.
Sure.
So they don't really understand how the court system's set up. Can you explain that?
I can, and kind of to draw it to, in running for these benches, I think most candidates hit a wall pretty quick, and they realize that people don't understand it, and people don't really care, until you get in that situation, until your ox is being gored, as we say. They don't really care about it. But the court system is broken into different levels of courts. What we're talking about is a district court, which was the original court provided for by the Texas Constitution. It is a court of general jurisdiction. At its base, it handles felony cases, family law cases, and any civil case with a jurisdictional minimum of $500 or more. And that has been changed a little bit by statute and by local administrative rule. Certain courts will take certain cases, but the district court is pretty much the general court. In Potter County, we have 5 district courts. 2 of them, this court that I'm running for, the 108th, and the 320th court, which Judge Denny has, are the 2 district courts that are solely Potter County. So we take a much higher percentage of the criminal cases and of the family law cases, which we share with the county court at law, and then the civil cases are distributed appropriately to the courts. But in Potter County, we will take more of those cases because the other 3 district courts have to go to Canyon every other week. People aren't going to be in the court system, and certainly for anything happy, other than if they're getting an adoption or something. But the 2 main things that people, a normal person on the street, is going to have some exposure to the court system, either personally or through a friend or a loved one, is going to be if somebody gets in trouble with the law in a criminal matter, or if there is a family law situation such as a divorce or a custody or a child support issue. When I first started practicing law 35 years ago, you could say that you might have some chance of getting in there if you had a car wreck or a medical malpractice case. But to be quite honest, those cases have dwindled because the expense of litigating those cases has increased so much that there's much less of those cases that are actually make it to the courtroom or even make it to a lawsuit.
So how do the cases get assigned to the court?
It kind of depends on what they are. Family law and civil cases go into a random assignment when they're filed with the district clerk. Literally, what it used to be is a little round hopper that had colored balls in it, and they would spin it, and it would one ball would pop out, and that would be the court. And then when they ran out of balls, they put all the balls back in. Now it's a random generator on a computer that has the percentages put into it, and if a case fits, some civil cases only the district court can hear, but a lot of civil cases county courts at law can also hear. Family law cases in Potter County, district courts can hear, and the county courts at law can hear. The 3 Randall County district courts, the district courts that go to Randall County by administrative order are opted out of family law in Potter County. And so it's randomly generated. Criminal cases, a district court will have a grand jury for, I believe, 2 or 3 months at a time, and all of those cases that get indicted will indict into that court, but then that court will transfer out criminal cases to the other district courts on a preset percentage. And I'm not really sure what the percentage is right now. I think 108th and 320th get 20 or 25% each, and the other 3 get a little lesser amount of that, whatever adds up to 100 on that. But they don't get near as many as 320th and the 108th.
That's interesting. So the district clerk is the one that actually
does that on a random basis, yes.
But it's done to where so nobody can choose what court they're in.
No, it's almost impossible to do that anymore. The only thing that changes on that is if you file a family law case, it has kids involved, it will stay in that court forever unless it gets transferred to another county. But if it's in this county, it will stay in that court. So any subsequent modifications or enforcements will always be in that court. There are a few exceptions. For instance, the 108th that I'm running for, Judge Woodburn was there. His son was also a lawyer. So there was, anytime his son was in a case, it would automatically get moved because otherwise it would punish him for just being a lawyer because if he had a case that went into Judge Whitmer's court, he would have to get out of it, or Judge Whitmer would have to recuse. So they just set that up. So periodically there'll be a few administrative orders like that.
How would a case get moved to another county?
Two ways. In a civil case, well, three really if you count criminal. In a civil case, if it's filed in a county that is by statute not the appropriate venue, then you can file what's called a motion to change venue, and that could end up with it being transferred. In a family law case with children, anytime that any child of that that's in that lawsuit resides in another county for 6 months, if somebody asks, and it's probably going to get transferred by statute. There are a few exceptions, but generally it follows that child wherever they go, more or less. In a criminal case, you really can't move it unless you do what's called a change of venue, because there's some sort of bias, or it's a really noteworthy or newsworthy case, and there's everybody knows about it and it needs to be moved somewhere else. You really don't see that much anymore. If you'll remember, back in the 70s, I think, Cullen Davis got transferred here out of Fort Worth. It used to happen all the time in capital murder cases. It doesn't so much now because with the internet, everybody knows about everything, so it doesn't really make much difference. I tried a case in 2009 that was out of Pampa, and it was a capital murder case, and we moved it to Lubbock, and that's the last one I've been involved in because it was a pretty newsworthy case, and Gray County was, relatively small, so that's how those types of cases can get transferred.
So you don't see as much transferring.
Not on criminal cases, you don't at all. Family law, but that's just a creature of statute. It's required. It's not because there's any real reason other than somebody's moved off.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. I guess a lot of people, as you go above the district courts, then you have if they don't like your decision, if you're the judge, or they think some procedure wasn't followed, then they can appeal that, right? That's
correct. They can appeal generally to the Court of Appeals. There are some instances when you can go directly to the Supreme Court of Texas or the Court of Criminal Appeals of Texas, but the first stop is normally the Court of Appeals, and there are, there's 14. There's really 15 because we have this business court now, but I don't even know how that works. Yeah. There's 14 courts of appeal all over the state, different regions of the state, with the exception of Houston has 2 because of population. We are in what's called the 7th Court of Appeals District, which is actually headquartered here in Amarillo. So it would be there's 4 judges on that court, 3 set at a time in rotating panels, and you can appeal generally any decision a district judge makes or a county court at law judge makes. You can appeal. Certainly, if it's a civil case, it might be financially burdensome to do so. In a criminal case, you generally have a right of appeal no matter what, and if you can't afford it, the state has to pay for it. Certain instances, a death penalty case, if death is assessed, the appeal goes directly to the Court of Criminal Appeals in Austin. It's kind of a weird deal. The first round of appeals in any case, criminal or civil, goes to the Court of Appeals, but then after that, civil cases go to the Supreme Court, criminal cases go to the Court of Criminal Appeals. Appeals to the higher courts, the Supreme Court and Court of Criminal Appeals, are not by right. They have to agree to hear those cases, so you don't get in there a lot.
So basically Texas has a bifurcated Supreme Court. One takes the civil, which is the Supreme Court, and anything criminal goes to the Criminal Court of Appeals.
Correct. And prior to, I think it was 1983, the Court of Appeals were actually called the Court of Civil Appeals, and civil appeals went there and then to the Supreme Court. The Court of Criminal Appeals at that time heard all criminal appeals in the state. The criminal cases have increased dramatically, and so they run them through the Court of Appeals now, and they broadened. They gave more personnel to most of the courts. I mean, ours has been 4 for a long time. I think it was 3 for a while, and it was 4. But you have in Houston, I'm not sure how many they have, 17 or 18 judges or more. Same way in San Antonio and Dallas.
So instead of adding courts, they add judges?
Just add judges. And like the Amarillo Court of Appeals is basically the top 46 counties of the Panhandle. It goes down to just south of Lubbock. And there's some odd things. I mean, we have a Court of Appeals in a couple of weird places. There's a Court of Appeals in Eastland, Texas, of all places. I'm sure they've tried to move it to Abilene a million times and they can't get it done. But there's one there.
Down by Cisco.
Yeah, down by Cisco. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I go through there sometimes on the way to Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand it. So we really don't. Why did they change it from the Court of Civil Appeals to the Supreme Court? Do you know?
Well, I think that they part of it was because they moved the criminal appeals over there because the Court of Criminal Appeals, that they would also, what they would do is there's 9 members of the Court of Criminal Appeals, and they would hear it in panels back then of 3. And I think it just got overwhelming because there became to be so many more criminal cases that were filed that it made more sense to increase the intermediate court personnel and run them through there. I think at the same time there were probably less civil appeals after a while because the cost of appeals become exponentially more as time went on from when cases got more complicated and there's more longer trials and things of that nature. You have more court reporters' notes and things of that, and it just becomes very expensive, and people weren't appealing them quite as much, and so they decided to kind of swap the burden that way.
Well, that's interesting. So, how many days do we have until early voting? Do you know? Have you been counting?
February 20th. I don't.
Like
It's in my particular race. We had to wait around with our breath holded to see what the people were going to do on a constitutional amendment, so we didn't get started as early, and so it seems much closer than it would be normally.
Yeah, I guess Judge Woodburn is going to. He can't run again because
he can't because of that. The law says that as a district judge, if you turn 75 before you start your term, you're disqualified, and I think he turns 75 next year sometime.
Well, it made it an open seat.
It did.
So it creates opportunity.
Plenty of people going for it too.
Yeah, you have 3 opponents.
3 opponents, 4 total.
Well, that's going to be an interesting race. Everybody's going to have to get out and work hard.
We'll probably end up in a runoff no matter what happens with those numbers.
Yeah, very well could be. Well, is there anything? How do people get a hold of you and learn more about Joe Marr Wilson?
They can go to joemarwilsonforjudge.com. That is the website. You can go to Facebook and just go Joe Marr Wilson, and you'll get my campaign page. That's the only one I have up. And then that'll lead you to email if they want to get a hold of us, phone numbers, things of that nature. We're going to be having a reception, get-together, fundraiser on January 11th at between 5 and 8 over at Reed Beverage. And so we're going to invite as many people as we can. Anybody who wants to come can sure show up, whether they want to give us money or just have something to drink and have something to eat. We'd be glad to talk to them, or I'd certainly be glad to talk to anybody who wants to call me. We're going to be out knocking on doors. We're going to put some signs up tomorrow, but after that, be knocking on some doors every chance we can get.
Very good. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the voters and why you're the best candidate?
Well, the first thing I tell the voters is vote. We all know that in Potter County. It is difficult to run for a position if you don't think very many people are going to vote because the margins are very thin, and you can win or lose based on things that don't have anything to do with the race. And so we want more people to vote. Certainly, I believe I'm the most qualified candidate. There's kind of, I think that my opposition falls into 2 camps. One, that there's no question I'm more qualified, more experienced than. The other is I've got a lady that was formerly a judge is running, but I think you have to look at that. She was a judge and in one court swapped courts, and the voters gave her opinion on it and voted her out. And I think that not a lot's changed since then. And so I think that just because I worry that just because she says I used to be a judge, that people will think about that, but they need to look at her qualifications aside from that, I hazard a guess that I've been in the courtroom other than Miss Sermon, who that was her job to sit in it. But as far as being in a courtroom and representing people, there's no question I've been in a courtroom more in 35 years than any of the other people have. Represented over 6,500 clients, 3,500 of them we counted the other day in family law matters, a bunch in criminal matters. I know I've handled more felonies, which is what this court handles, than anybody in this race, including Ms. Sermon. And I think that I can do a good job at it because I've dealt with those type of cases from the other side. And one of the things that has to happen for us to have effective administration of justice is you can't get on the bench and just decide I'm going to run everybody the way I want to run them. It doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work like that. So you have to know what lawyers need, what the clients need, and fold that into administering justice, because you can try to push it down that chute that goes wherever it goes as hard as you want to. But if people aren't cooperating with you, it ain't going to go very fast. And we need to get people out of the jail, either back into society or to the prison. A lot of them need to go to the state hospital, but we can't do a hell of a lot about that right now because we don't have many state hospital beds. But I think I know more about what I can use to get lawyers and clients in the right position to move things more effectively, get the best result for everyone, have everybody walk out of that courtroom, to the most part, saying, hey, I got a fair shot, and this is justice as much as we can get it. We'd love to have perfect justice, but if we can't have perfect justice, we need the best justice we can get.
Yeah, and only 50% of your clients or customers are going to be happy.
Generally.
So you never have a majority that are happy.
That's true.
Right?
But I'll tell you something I found out. In the first few times this happened, I thought it was a joke. But I've had a lot of referrals, and this is obviously in family and civil law cases, but a lot of referrals from the opposing party. And the first time that happened, I thought, oh, well, that's not much of a compliment. You know, they go hire him, you know. But I found out that wasn't. It was that we got in the courtroom, and they actually thought I did a better job than their lawyer did. And it became clear that when that would happen, that I thought, well, okay, I'll take that as a compliment. You know, I mean, I wasn't personal to that person, but it was. They thought he did a good job. He got a good result for that client. I wish I'd hired him, and so we always took that as a really big compliment. And
sure.
And so no, not everybody's going to be happy, but you know, a lot of people, they may be unhappy with the result, but if they feel like the system was rigged against them, then they're always going to be unhappy about it. If they think they got a fair shot, they'll eventually get over the hurt, and you know, we can get back in line with real life and give it another shot.
Well, most of them know that they're guilty, I guess.
Yeah, on the criminal side, you know, that's you got that. You know, in the criminal law, people, I get asked this question a lot. How do you defend somebody you know is guilty? And I said, well, that's easy. The ones that are hard are the ones that are innocent, because you know what the system's like. And if you believe they're innocent, you know that if it's gotten that far where the state's got their hooks into them, that they've got a problem. And they can be as innocent as all get out, and they may go to prison over it, and it happens. Most of the time what we're arguing about in the criminal justice system is not whether someone's guilty or innocent. We're arguing about what is the appropriate result. And, you know, usually from my standpoint, that's something that's very personal to my client, but a lot of times it's also what's best, you know, for the public as far as an efficient use of tax money. You know, everybody gets real tough and hard on all sorts of crime until they understand how much it costs to enforce that. And certainly you can't just let people out of jail because you don't want to pay for it if they need to be in jail. But, you know, we've got a really good mental health court now in Potter County, a veterans court, but they can only handle so many people. And if we can increase the capacity of those, which probably is going to require funding from the state or something of that nature, and figure out a way to get more people in those, we can be successful in getting people out of jail but making them productive citizens. And then that leaves us the space to deal with these people that really need to go away for a long period of time. But what ends up happening is a lot of them either end up all in jail together in our county jail where we have to feed them awaiting trial, or on bond out in the public, and we can't take care of the people that need to get taken care of, and we can't get rid of the people we need to get rid of. And we've got to do a little better job about that. The jail situation is becoming critical again, and there's no easy answer to it other than building bigger jails. And everybody's all for that till they have to pay for it. So we got to figure out another way to do it. And I think there's ways to do it. Won't be perfect, and we're going to have to feel around and find those ways. But you have to be open to it. You have to decide when you come to work every day that that's what you want to do, and not just that you want to get things over with as fast as possible so you can go home. And we've had that problem before with some of our judges. Mm-hmm. I mean, we work a lot. We always work 40 hours a week, sometimes 50, 60, sometimes more. So I figure if I got to put 40 in, I can put 40 in, and that's not a big problem. If I got to put a little more in, I can do that. I don't see it as work as much as I see it as a possibility to do something different that I have more direct effect on people, hopefully for good.
Well, that sounds like an interesting job. Sounds like a good public service that not everybody's qualified to do. What other qualifications to be in this position you're running for?
Well, there's not a lot. I mean, you've got to be 25 years old and have a law degree. I think now you have to have practiced for, God, I think it's 4 or 5 years. But I mean, generally, I guess if you're 25, it might be hard to do that. But
you have to be an experienced lawyer.
Yeah, you have to have some experience. You don't have to have a lot. Generally, not many people are going to be looking to try to get it that don't have, some decent amount of experience. But I have seen situations where people certainly in some rural areas have gotten on the bench at a very young age simply because there wasn't a lot of competition and been there for a long time. I think that was a lot of the push with the constitutional amendment, or at least that's what they said is we got judges retiring, and they're not getting replaced. A lot of us had talked about that and thought right now, especially in this area, we've got a lot of retired judges who are able under statute to sit as visiting judges, but they don't have to work full time, and they can kind of pick and choose, and they really help out a lot. And I always thought, well, that's probably a pretty good answer to it. Not being ageist at all. I'll get there one of these days, but I think when you start extending it to almost 80 years old, a lot of people can do it till they're 80. Mm-hmm. But the law of averages, with us being humans and what our lifespans are, there's a real good possibility that as you get older, the older you get into your 70s, the curve is going to might catch up with you, and then we're stuck with somebody that can't do it. I mean, there's been a few times in the Panhandle where we've had people have strokes or something, and then we have a dead bench for like 3 years. I don't think that's what anybody wanted in it. I think you can retire at 75 and have all the work you want as a visiting judge. Mm-hmm. So we ought to be able to utilize, and I know in Randall County they've utilized that to set up a domestic violence court using visiting judges to try to move some cases. So, hopefully we can do some things like that up here.
Sure. Sounds good.
Good.
Well, I want to commend you for having the courage to step up and run for public office. It takes some fortitude and courage to get out.
Courage is one word for it.
Run for it. Of course, at least you get paid to do it.
Yeah,
so
true.
That's a benefit. Yeah. So there's good return on your money if you win, I guess.
You win. Mm-hmm.
So, and we appreciate you coming by, and good luck out there, and be safe.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks for asking me.